Hello, I'm teacher Ivan from WUNNA Educational Services. We are continuing with the solving quadratic equations. In our previous lesson, we saw how we use factorization method. Today we are looking at how we use completing squares. So, from our general quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Then these are the steps. Step 1, we take the constant c on the other side, so that we remain with ax squared plus bx equaling to negative c. Step 2, we make sure x squared is independent from the coefficient. Meaning, we have a coefficient a. Since we want to make x squared independent, therefore we shall divide out by a, so that we end up with x squared plus b over a x equaling to negative c over a. So that is step 2. Please master these steps. 1 was taking the coefficient on the other side. 2 is making x squared independent. 3, and this is the most confusing and the most important, we shall get the coefficient of x, which is b over a. We get the square of a half of it, the square of a half of the coefficient of x. So the half of it is, we divide this by 2, we get b over 2a. That is the half of the coefficient, but squared. And add it on both sides. We add it on the left hand side and the right hand side. Hope that one is good. That is the challenging step, but easy. After adding the square of the half of the coefficient of b on both sides, we come to step number 4. We shall now consider the squares x squared and d squared. We bring them in a common bracket, but considering the first sign. So that is x plus b over 2a squared. Because when you expand this, you come back to this. So in other words, we are factorizing this expression into x plus b over 2a in bracket squared. But the easiest way of getting this is consider the squares and the first sign. So get x plus b over 2 into bracket squared. But with time, of course, you will master that. That is if you practice. Then we simplify this side. Of course, we shall simplify the square. You get b squared over 4a squared, and then work out minus c over a, since this is a negative. So the square of this, when we simplify on this side, then we end up with b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. So what we do, we get the square root of both sides. When we get the square root of this side, the square cancels with the square root, and we remain with the x plus b over 2a equaling to, the square root of this is either positive or a negative. And therefore, because we want to find the value of x, so we must take this on the other side. We shall end up with So when we take this on this side, it becomes negative. So we shall end up with negative b over 2a minus or plus the square root of this. And when we simplify this, because the square root of 4a squared is 2a, and these two have the same denominators, so we deal with the numerators. We end up with x equaling to negative b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And that is how we get the roots using completing of square. In fact, doing this derives the quadratic formula or the bulldozer, and that is the completing of square method. Please, in our next episode, we are looking at examples of solving quadratic equations using completing squares. So don't miss, otherwise see you there.